Most people fear staying at home because they think it means being idle, unproductive, or disconnected. But the truth is the opposite. Staying at home is one of the most tactical, intelligent, and self-protective decisions you can make in a world that drains your energy, your money, your peace, and your purpose. Marcus Aurelius said that the greatest retreat a person can ever find is inside himself, not in the marketplace, not in public gatherings, not in distractions, but in solitude. And he was right. Home is where you build the strongest version of yourself. In today's world, stepping outside exposes you to unnecessary spending, unnecessary pressure, unnecessary arguments, and unnecessary wounds. Seneca warned that the crowd leads a man away from wisdom and into chaos. Every unnecessary outing comes with temptations, noise, drama, and influences that weaken your focus. But at home, the noise disappears. At home, you hear your own thoughts. At home, you save money. At home, you protect your peace. At home, you avoid fights, misunderstandings, conflicts, and quarrels that could easily escalate into deep emotional scars. Epictetus said that freedom is found in self-control, not in movement. Staying home teaches you that control. It puts you in command of your time, your habits, and your mind. Einstein spent long hours alone because he understood that greatness is built in silence, not in chaos. By the time you finish this video, you will understand exactly why staying at home might be the smartest decision you'll make this season. Listen to the end. Every point builds into something deeper. And if you're new here, subscribe to the Inner Fortress, where strong minds are built. Rule 1. Staying at home strengthens your mind and sharpens inner awareness. Staying at home forces you into a rare environment, complete honesty with yourself. In a world that thrives on distraction, noise, and emotional chaos, solitude becomes a mirror. Marcus Aurelius said that a person's true greatness is revealed by what they can be alone with. When you stay home intentionally, not out of laziness but discipline, you begin to confront thoughts you've buried under noise. You see your fears, your dreams, your desires, and your bad habits with a clarity the outside world won't allow. Staying home strips away external chaos. Seneca warned that people run to crowds because they fear meeting their own minds. But when you stay home, you stop absorbing the emotional smoke of others, their worries, their anger, the gossip, their expectations. You start hearing the calm voice of your own reasoning. Silence is not empty. It's full of answers you never hear when the world is shouting at you. Solitude develops internal muscles most people never train. Epictetus taught that a person who cannot command their own mind is a slave. When you're alone, you learn the truth about your discipline. Do you work when no one is watching? Do you follow your routines when no one is judging? Do you choose growth or comfort? Solitude exposes the gap between who you think you are and who you really are, and that exposure leads to transformation. Home becomes your mental laboratory. Einstein retreated into silence because he understood that greatness requires deep focus. The mind sharpens when it's not constantly reacting. Staying home removes the world's fingerprints from your thoughts. You start thinking originally instead of emotionally. You create instead of consume. You reflect instead of react. You process life with clarity instead of confusion. People misunderstand solitude because they confuse it with isolation. But staying home is not running away, it's stepping inward. It's choosing clarity over chaos. It's choosing growth over noise. It's choosing your destiny over distractions. Your home becomes your fortress, a space for reinvention, reflection, and inner sharpening. And before moving on, this is where I remind you. Subscribe to the Inner Fortress, where powerful minds come to evolve. Rule 2, staying at home protects you from chaos, hurt, fights, drama and emotional storms. The outside world is noisy, reactive, unpredictable, and full of emotional landmines. Most of the pain people experience is not fate, it's proximity. Proximity to the wrong people. Proximity to chaos. Proximity to unnecessary interactions. Marcus Aurelius said we suffer more from our perceptions than reality, and nothing manipulates perception like being around unstable, emotionally charged environments. When you stay home, you immediately sidestep unnecessary harm. You avoid the random confrontations, the misunderstandings, the jealous people, the impatient strangers, the aggressive personalities, the gossip-driven crowds, and the emotional traps waiting outside. Seneca believed the crowd steals your calm. Crowds amplify insecurity, anger, pressure, and conflict. Even when you're not the cause of it, staying home protects your emotional skin from being scratched by every passing personality. Staying home protects you from fights, the petty ones, the unexpected ones, and the ones that escalate into real damage. How many people have been insulted, embarrassed, provoked, or disrespected simply because they were at the wrong place at the wrong time? Home removes you from the battlefield entirely. You don't get into arguments you didn't start. You don't walk into the moods of unstable people. You don't participate in drama you never asked for. Epictetus believed that the wise avoid environments that threaten their peace. Staying home gives you the distance needed to preserve your emotional stability. You no longer absorb random anger. You no longer get dragged into other people's conflicts. You no longer inherit their stress, jealousy, bitterness, or projections. Your peace becomes protected property. Einstein avoided chaotic social environments because he knew emotional turbulence destroys clarity. And staying home gives you the same shield. Your thoughts become cleaner. Your emotions become calmer. Your interactions become intentional. You move only when necessary and withdraw when wise. Staying home protects your heart. It protects your dignity. It protects your mood. It protects your focus. It protects your future. And in a world full of conflict, misunderstanding, and impulsive individuals, safety is not cowardice, it is wisdom. Rule 3. Staying at home increases your self-mastery, discipline and inner command. Self-mastery is the highest level of personal strength, and it grows in solitude. When you stay home, you remove the external performance mask, and your real discipline steps into the light. Marcus Aurelius wrote that the toughest battle is the battle within. Staying home places you right on that battlefield. At home, your habits are exposed. If you're disciplined, it shows. If you're lazy, it shows. If you're organized or scattered, focused or distracted, intentional or impulsive, it all becomes clear. Seneca said that greatness is built from consistent daily actions, not dramatic moments. And those actions happen at home when no one is watching. Staying home shows you your impulses. Epictetus warned that those who cannot command their impulses cannot command their lives. At home, you see exactly how often you reach for distractions. You see whether you can resist temptations. You see whether you can maintain structure. You discover your real level of self-control, and that awareness becomes the first step to mastery. Home becomes your discipline dojo. Your routines become your armor. You learn how to manage your time rather than letting the world manage it. You create systems instead of excuses. You train your mind to push itself without pressure from the outside world. You build rituals that strengthen your identity. Einstein didn't create breakthroughs because he was constantly stimulated. He created them because he mastered the art of prolonged focus. That kind of focus grows at home, in silence, in consistency. You become someone who doesn't wait for motivation. You move because discipline has become your nature. Staying home teaches you to depend on yourself, not the environment. And when a person becomes self-led, they become unstoppable. They stop waiting for the world to push them and start pushing themselves. This is self-mastery, and it is born in the quiet walls of your home. Rule 4. Staying at home saves you unnecessary spending and financial leakage. One of the most overlooked benefits of staying at home is how much money you save without even trying. Most people don't realize that the outside world is designed to make them spend. Every outing is a psychological trap. Food, transport, impulse buying, social pressure, entertainment, unnecessary upgrades, and emotional spending triggered by comparison. Marcus Aurelius warned that many of our desires are not truly ours. They are borrowed from the world around us, and nothing exposes you to artificial desires like going out too often. When you stay home, your financial clarity skyrockets. Seneca believed that the richest person is the one who needs the least, not the one who has the most. At home, you stop spending money on things that don't align with your goals. You stop feeding impulses. You stop leaking money through boredom, peer influence, or, let me just step out for a minute, moments that become expensive rituals. Staying at home protects you from emotional spending. Epictetus taught that you must separate what you want from what is necessary. The outside world blurs that line. Billboards, music, crowds, advertisements, even the behavior of others can convince you to spend money simply because you were exposed to stimulation. Home removes that noise and gives you a clear view of what you actually need. Einstein lived a simple, quiet lifestyle because he understood that creativity is more powerful than consumption. When you stay home, you naturally break the cycle of financial waste. You cook more, plan more, think more, and prioritize more. You start saving without forcing yourself to save. Your spending becomes intentional rather than emotional. The truth is simple. Every unnecessary outing comes with unnecessary expenses. Every unnecessary expense delays your goals. And every delayed goal affects your future. Staying home isn't just about peace. It's about prosperity. It's about protecting your financial energy just as fiercely as you protect your emotional and mental energy. Rule 5. Staying at home helps you create more and complain less. When you stay home, something powerful happens. You shift from consuming life to creating it. The world outside pushes you into reaction mode. You respond to noise, people, expectations, and distractions. You rarely produce anything meaningful because you're too busy absorbing everything around you. Marcus Aurelius wrote in his Meditations that the value of a person is measured by what they produce, not what they consume. Staying home removes overstimulation and gives you space to build. Seneca believed that a man who complains has given up on the ability to create change. Complaining thrives in chaos, in environments where your mind is disorganized, tired, or emotionally overloaded. But when you're home, your thoughts slow down. Your mind becomes clear enough to generate solutions instead of excuses. You shift from being overwhelmed to being productive. Epictetus taught that energy must be directed, not wasted. When you stay home, You can direct your mental energy toward improvement, reading, planning, building skills, improving your craft, making better decisions, designing your life. The more you create, the less you complain, because productivity replaces frustration. Einstein was productive not because he had more talent, but because he had fewer distractions. His silence was his strength. His solitude was his creative fuel. Staying home gives you that same environment. You begin to discover how much you can actually accomplish when the outside world stops interrupting you. Complaining fades when creation rises. You no longer blame your circumstances, because now you're building something. You're writing, learning, creating, improving, evolving. Your home becomes your creative studio, a place where your gifts grow instead of being drowned by outside noise. This is how powerful, disciplined, impactful people are made, in silence. Rule 6. Staying at home gives you clarity and sharper judgment. Most people make terrible decisions not because they're foolish, but because they're overstimulated. The outside world forces you to think fast, react fast, choose fast, and respond fast. No clarity, no depth, no inner consultation. Marcus Aurelius reflected constantly because he knew the mind becomes wise when it has room to breathe. When you stay home, your judgment sharpens dramatically. Seneca taught that a calm mind sees truth more clearly than a rushed one. Home slows your thinking down to a human pace. You process information instead of absorbing it. You evaluate situations instead of reacting blindly. You see people's intentions with more accuracy, because emotional noise isn't clouding your perception. Epictetus believed that wisdom comes from separating what is within your control from what is not. When you're home, that separation becomes easier. You see where your energy is being wasted. You see which relationships drain you. You see which habits hold you back. You start thinking long-term instead of drowning in short-term impulses. Einstein understood that clarity requires distance from interference. His breakthroughs were born in quiet rooms, not crowded spaces. Staying home gives you the same advantage. You begin making decisions from a place of clarity, not pressure. You start anticipating consequences instead of stumbling into them. You see the bigger picture of your life with a calm, strategic mind. Clarity is power. It prevents mistakes. It prevents unnecessary emotional entanglements. It prevents you from taking risks that don't align with your future. When you stay home long enough for your thoughts to settle, your judgment becomes razor sharp, and your life becomes easier to navigate. Rule 7. Staying at home strengthens emotional discipline and stabilizes your reactions. Emotional discipline is one of the rarest abilities in the modern world. People can work hard, speak well, look confident, and appear intelligent, yet fall apart the moment emotion enters the room. Anger, fear, jealousy, insecurity, irritation, confusion, these feelings can destroy a person's peace within seconds if they don't understand how their mind works. Staying at home gives you the one thing emotional discipline demands: silence. Silence is the soil where emotional strength grows. Chaos demands reaction, but silence demands reflection. And reflection is what turns a reactive person into a disciplined one. Marcus Aurelius believed that the mind becomes invincible when it learns how to regulate its own storms. When you are outside constantly, your emotions are thrown around like a ship in a storm. People challenge you, situations provoke you, crowds drain you, noise agitates you. But when you stay home, the waves settle. Your emotions have room to breathe, and you finally begin to understand how they move. The outside world forces you to react. Home allows you to observe, and observation is the first step to mastery. Most emotional chaos comes from exposure. Seneca taught that the crowd steals your calm because the crowd lives from impulse. When you constantly expose yourself to people who speak without thinking, react without reasoning, and move without understanding, their instability becomes yours. Staying at home distances you from the emotional turbulence of others. You stop inheriting their anger, their panic, their insecurity, the jealousy, their mood swings. Your emotions finally become your own, clean, unpolluted, manageable. Staying at home removes triggers, and without triggers, your nervous system resets. The outside world pressures you into constant emotional responses, responding to rude people, tolerating disrespect, absorbing people's problems, and reacting to their tone, their expressions, their behavior. At home, none of this exists. There is no emotional ambush waiting around the corner. You begin seeing how often your emotions were reactions to other people's unprocessed wounds, not your own truth. Epictetus taught that emotional discipline is the ability to choose your response, instead of being enslaved by your impulses. Most people never reach this ability because their environment never gives them a chance to practice. Emotional discipline needs silence the same way plants need water. When you're home, emotion isn't forced out of you, it rises naturally, and when it rises, you can study it. You can see what triggers your anger. You can see what activates your insecurity. You can see what inflates your pride. You can see what awakens your fear. Without the pressure of instant reaction, you learn how to hold your emotions, instead of letting them hold you. Staying home gives you the luxury of emotional space, time to separate the emotion from the story your mind creates. For example, you feel irritated, but why? You feel sad, but is it fatigue? You feel angry, but is it disappointment? You feel anxious, but is it overstimulation? These distinctions become clear in solitude. Seneca believed that most emotional suffering is not from the emotion itself but from misunderstanding it. You cannot understand emotions while reacting to them in real time in a chaotic environment. But when you're home, you have the clarity to decode your feelings. And decoding is the foundation of mastery. Einstein understood emotional peace because he protected his space with the same seriousness he protected his theories. He avoided unnecessary conflict, unnecessary conversations, unnecessary drama, not because he feared people, but because he understood something brilliant. Emotional turbulence kills creativity, focus, reasoning, and depth. When you stay home, you follow the same principle. You guard your peace like a priceless resource. And as your peace grows, your emotional discipline strengthens automatically. When you're home long enough, something life-changing begins happening. Your reaction time slows. You no longer explode instantly when upset. You no longer snap when irritated. You no longer panic when uncertain. You no longer assume the worst when confused. You no longer let your feelings hijack your actions. You start inserting space between emotion and reaction. This is the highest form of emotional intelligence. This is what Marcus Aurelius practiced during war, what Seneca taught to leaders, what Epictetus drilled into his students, and what Einstein demonstrated through his balanced life. Staying home also gives you the ability to respond with wisdom instead of emotion. When you're constantly outside, every reaction is rushed. You respond because someone is watching. You defend yourself because someone challenges you. You raise your voice because someone raises theirs. You protect your ego because the environment pressures you to. But when you're home, there's no social performance. You can feel an emotion fully, without acting on it prematurely. Emotion becomes information, not instruction. In this calm space, you develop emotional habits that strengthen your mind long term. You learn how to self-soothe. You learn how to reflect instead of attack. You learn how to communicate instead of explode. You learn how to remain stable when your feelings fluctuate. You learn how to stay grounded even when triggered mentally. These are the emotional tools that create mature relationships, strong leadership, and deep inner stability. Staying home also reveals your emotional patterns. You begin to see the repeated emotional loops that have shaped your life. The way certain words trigger you. The way you shut down when overwhelmed. The way you overthink when nervous. The way you become defensive when insecure. The way you avoid problems when anxious. Epictetus taught that emotional habits become visible only in solitude. And once visible, they can finally be healed. That healing begins inside your home, in the quiet moments when no one is judging your emotions and no one is demanding a performance. As you continue staying home intentionally, your emotional maturity expands. You become less reactive. You become slower to anger. You become more thoughtful. You become more peaceful. You become more self-aware. You stop letting temporary feelings create permanent damage. You stop sabotaging relationships with uncontrolled reactions. You stop misreading situations. You stop absorbing other people's emotional wounds. This transformation makes you stronger in every area of life. At work, you don't respond emotionally to pressure. In relationships, you don't argue impulsively. In decision-making, you don't panic. In conflict, you don't lose control. In life, you move like someone who is centered, grounded, and wise. Someone who can weather storms without drowning in them. Staying home teaches you the emotional discipline most people never achieve because they don't allow themselves silence long enough to understand themselves. Emotional discipline doesn't come from suppressing emotions, it comes from understanding them. And understanding needs space, time, stillness, and solitude. Exactly what your home provides. As you master your emotions at home, the world outside becomes easier. People's tones no longer destabilize you. Their moods no longer manipulate you. Their behavior no longer confuses you. Their chaos no longer drags you down. You become emotionally bulletproof, not cold, not detached, not numb, but wise, steady, and internally powerful. And before we go to the final rule, here is your reminder. Subscribe to the Inner Fortress. Emotional strength is not built in the world, it is built inside yourself. And this channel is where the processes begin. Rule 8. Staying at home helps you build an unshakable inner world. Your inner world is the engine that drives every part of your life, your confidence, your decisions, your boundaries, your interpretation of reality, your peace, and your future. And staying at home gives you the perfect environment to build that inner world without interruption, distortion, or interference. Marcus Aurelius said that the soul becomes dyed with the color of its thoughts. The problem is simple. Most people spend so much time outside that their minds are dyed with the thoughts, fears, and chaos of everyone else. Staying at home reverses this contamination and returns your mind to its original clarity. When you stay home, you finally meet yourself without filters. Seneca taught that a person who cannot sit alone is a person who fears their own truth. Outside, distractions protect you from self-awareness. You drown uncomfortable thoughts in noise. You silence your intuition with movement. You avoid your weaknesses by hiding behind crowds. But when you are home long enough, the masks fall away. You hear your real desires. You see your real flaws. You confront your real potential. And you begin building a life that aligns with who you actually are, not who the world wants you to be.